Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to run through Emerald's P6-Reporter tool. It's an add-on to P6 that we've built, and we're going to show it to you live in action and explain the different pieces to it and how you could take advantage of it. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm coming to you from Calgary today. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. And with me doing the heavy lifting is Marilyn Backstrom. She's in Edmonton. And she will show you how you can use the data we put together in P6-Reporter into some other tools, Power BI, Tableau, et cetera, et cetera. So let's talk about why we built this tool. Okay, so pretty much all of our tools were created for a client somewhere along the way, first and foremost, because they wanted something that they couldn't get directly out of P6. That's pretty much how all of our software tools have come together. Now, in terms of P6-Reporter, well, what are the common struggles? Well, generally, the data that we have in P6 is so broad, so vast, but not always necessarily that easy to get at. Okay, not everyone understands a Gantt chart or histograms or what is a simple way to explain the critical path without having pages and pages and pages of things to go through? Or if you've ever tried to do a logic diagram, putting that big nasty logic diagram all over the wall is not always easy either. So all of our tools have started from some point that a client couldn't fulfill in P6, and P6-Reporter is the same. The challenge of being able to show people where they need to be, at what point in time, what's the priority, is there any wiggle room on that? So float, as we would call it in P6. All that data, it's not always easy to convey it to the folks that you've got to convey it to, especially when, that data is going to a really extended team. Okay, you might have a small specialty contractor that you're dealing with, and then you might be working with a CEO of an international company. So you've got such a broad, dynamic group that you might be working with. So you need to make sure that what you're showing them as well is correct, it's accurate. And when you show it to them, you have to be able to get it out quickly. So those are challenges with P6. If you're relying on layouts to pull data out and maybe put into Excel, if you've done it right all the time, that's pretty good, because it's very easy to make a mistake. If you got a filter on, for example, that you weren't expecting, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why we really developed this reporter tool, and I'm going to explain it, and then Marilyn's going to show it, to help drive proper business decisions more quickly. And more of our clients are using a third-party tool to get at the data. Okay, so that's why we built P6-Reporter. More and more dashboarding is it's a big thing right now. People are pushing data into many tools. Today we're going to touch on probably Power BI, but maybe some Tableau. I'm not sure. Marilyn will kind of show us different things. And we've got Oracle data visualization. We've worked with business objects. So the output that your team is looking for, the tool that you want to use, is less important than making sure we're getting you P6 data appropriately, effectively, and accurately, and helping those business decisions. That's really why we put it together. Now, why don't I ask a quick question here? And if you want to answer the poll, awesome. How do you get reporting data from P6 currently? So I mentioned Excel. That's pretty common. Excel into Power BI is probably one of the most common sets we're seeing. Access, interestingly enough, used to be more common, but it's less and less now. So it's pretty interesting. Things are changing. I'd say 5-6 years ago, Access databases were kind of common, but at least I was seeing that with some clients. So I'll share for those who chose to respond, I'll just share it. So pretty much excel in this group. And if you're interested to kind of see how other people do these things, go to our website because we do share, we total up the poll results every so often, so every 6 months, every year, and we put them on our website. So that way you can also sort of see what other people are doing. And then let me ask a second question. I'll just do two right here. How often do you do reporting? Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind. Depending on your projects, of course, it's going to vary. So if you're doing turnarounds, daily is very common. Even every shift could be what you're dealing with. We're hoping to drive to weekly on the larger projects, but monthly is still very common with a lot of our clients. And if you're trying to drive that down to weekly and get better updating, take a look at some of our other webinars. Our TAPS webinar, our CAPS webinar could be pretty interesting for you, and our Scrubber webinar. If you do a lot of importing and you have to deal with that, those could be interesting too, to get your update cycles down. Okay. Now, why? Well, of course, we're trying to get the reports into people's hands more frequently so they have what they need to make good business decisions. Ultimately, everything we're trying to do in P6 is to track the time, the cost, the resources that we're using to deliver the project and make sure we're getting them done on time, on budget, and with the right resources in a safe manner, of course. Okay, so P6-Reporter is a tool that used to be called Data Warehouse. So EP Data Warehouse was what we called it, and we used to have our EP dashboard. Now, unfortunately, a few years ago, Adobe, we built it on Flex, which was an Adobe tool, and they open sourced that when they were in a battle with Apple. So instead of building another tool, we decided to focus on the warehousing aspect and make the reporting easier to access out of the warehouse. So the way it works, so we use the concept of snapshots. So they're not baselines, but it's a similar idea where we're taking a snapshot of all the data that you choose, so you have some controls, and then that is pushed through queries into another tool. So we've pre-built a bunch of the queries and the elements that you need to get them in to the other system, whether again it's Tableau, whether you're using Power BI, Domo, business objects, blah, blah, blah. There's so many of them. That part allows you to use what you're used to, but we're helping you get the data out from P6 much better, more consistent, clean, because some things in P6 are calculated on the fly for a person to see, and they're not stored in the database. So we've got those things taken care of because we use the API to run all that kind of data. Now, the benefits of the multiple snapshots. So some people just take copies in P6, they use baselines, they do, whatever they can to make what they've got work. So the snapshots really up the game, up what you can report on. You can do more comparisons, and Marilyn's going to show you that. So you can do current update versus last update versus 3 months ago versus baseline, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do a lot of more comparisons, and you can do more impact analysis. Okay, so with coding, you can tag a bunch of different things and color coded, et cetera. So lots of good capabilities by having multiple snapshots. And you can compare year over year. So one of our client examples, that was important for them. They were an engineering firm and they wanted to compare year over year. Okay, so what was our workload? What was our resource loading year over year? Okay, so those are things that are not necessarily that easy to do in P6. And so we've tackled those. So the process is you snapshot, And in the snapshotting, we simplify the tables. So I'm not sure the exact number, but there's a few hundred tables in P6. So we reduce that, denormalize it, so make it easier to work with the data into these reporting tools. Okay, so that's a huge thing. And in doing that, we have the spread generator. So if you're looking at resourcing and costing, you want that as CPI, SPI, that sort of stuff. You want it over certain periods of time. So those are the spreads. So we take care of all that. And the data that we grab out is at all the different levels. So at the project level, at the activity or task level, the spreads, as I mentioned, so that's both resources and expenses. And then in terms of the scheduling, calendars, issues, those sort of elements that you might use. And then, as I mentioned, from those snapshots, we have pre-built data views. So when a client buys this, we help them work with the views we've got and then configure them so that they're getting your codes, your user-defined fields, which we can't know in advance, right? So there's always a little consulting there to get your team grabbing the right data and then helping you build whatever you need in your own tool. Okay, so that's sort of how we do it, and then you've got your reporting out in your own system. Okay, I think that's enough of an intro, and I think I can give it over to Mary Lynn, and she can start showing you the tool in action. I am transferring it over to you now, Mary Lynn.
Okay, I'll just share my screen and we can have a look.
If you do have questions, as Mary Lynn's showing you different dashboards, explaining to you how to do snapshotting, just throw them in the questions and I'll answer them as she goes.
So what I'd like to do is start in Power BI, but what I want to just kind of kick it off with is Nicole has talked about snapshotting. So you may be wondering, okay, what is snapshotting all about? What am I getting myself into? How hard is this to do? Let's walk through one. You'll find it's really simple to do. So I've got a racetrack diagram here, and I've got the October snapshot for this file. I've got the November snapshot. So let's go into P6 and generate a December snapshot. So if I go into P6, generating a snapshot is really easy. We'll look at this in just a second. First of all, of course, we need to go and do our updates or make our changes in the file itself. So if I go into my activities, I don't have a lot of updates I need to do in here, but one update that I have received is I've got an activity here that was supposed to be finished 1st of November. Well, that's extended. We've all had that happen from time to time. An activity just doesn't complete when it's supposed to. So this particular one is actually going out to January. So I'm going to select that. And it didn't put me in January. My apologies. It's the calendar. So I will go to the 9th of January. There we go. So you can see it's extended that particular activity. Now, it could be a multitude of activities you're updating, could be just one. When you've finished your updates, of course, I need to schedule this. And I'll just schedule it, and then we'll take a snapshot. So I've made my changes for my updates. I'm just going back to the project tab. Now, this particular layout you see here, this project has already had some snapshots taken. You saw them in Power BI. So the information that I need to give it here is really simple. First of all, I've got a data warehouse snapshot run message. I usually take this out because it'll give it back to me when it's finished the snapshot. Now I need to tell it what snapshot period, and I'm taking the snapshot for December. And the only other thing I need to do is tell it to go ahead and take the snapshot. Now, these snapshots can be automated. So you can have the system do that for you completely. So you wouldn't have to necessarily worry about doing this, but you can also see how easy it is to actually just go in and create a snapshot yourself. It's not time consuming, it's not difficult. It just takes a couple of minutes to run through here. And once we've got the snapshot, we'll go back and load it into the racetrack and have a look at the information we've got there. Now, when you're dealing with taking snapshots, progressive snapshots, it is so handy to have the older snapshots. As you take new ones, the older ones are still there for reference. I've had on a number of projects where I've actually had to do the scenario that Nicole was speaking about because I didn't have access at the company I was giving a hand to of this reporting tool. So you were actually keeping a previous copy to compare, for example, the last update to the current update. So maybe I've got an activity that in my current update is 3 days behind, just as an example. Now, was it 3 days behind the last update, or did that all of a sudden happen? Those kind of things you're usually looking to track pretty closely. So being able to compare snapshots becomes increasingly valuable as you set up those types of reports. And there's many other things that you can end up comparing depending on what piece of information you need to focus on. So this should be through right away here. And our snapshot is finished. So that's really all we need to do in P6. We've done the update, we've created the snapshot, so I can go back to our racetrack report here. Now I want the racetrack report to first of all refresh, just so that we're looking at the right information. So that's really simple to do. And now what I want to do here is I've got October and I've got November. Well, I can change it up so November is at the top if I want to. You can be creative here, what you want to see. And I can go to look at December now. Now you can see the activity that ended up extending is impacting this particular bar here. So you can see quite a difference from the pipeline for regulatory in the previous month, pipeline for regulatory in this month. So it's not only the Gantt bars it's affecting. That snapshot is grabbing all the information. So if you wanted to compare what did my resource profile look like last month to this month, you can do it. You can also compare things like criticality on your bars. So having these snapshots, whether you're looking at them stacked, so I've got November and then December on the same page, or whether I'm looking at them so I'm actually changing on one page, snapshot to snapshot. Whatever you find is easiest, you can create the comparison and end up with some very valuable information. Now I want to show you a few things in Tableau as well, but first of all, you can see down the side here, we've got a number of reports in Power BI. So this particular set of reports is created off of, you guessed it at the top here, drilling projects. But keep in mind that these types of reports can be any type of project. You may have slightly different codes involved, you may be grouping slightly differently, but it can grab very large amounts of data and summarize it for you and give it to you in the dashboards. And then if you need to drill down, you can definitely do that. So if I'm looking at the management dashboard, for example, this particular dashboard is showing me budget hours status by team. I've got what's upcoming. I've got late and early and budget status as well. I've got over allocated resources, and then I've got milestone monitoring. Now, this particular piece here, the milestone monitoring, we have that both in the management dashboard And we also have the milestone reporting in a trending dashboard, side by side and singly. So we'll look at that as well. But many, many times I've had to do these types of comparisons for where were these milestones last month to where are they this month kind of scenario in P6. Now, can it be done? Yes. Is it labor intensive? Yes, it is. Now, when you've got these dashboards connected and just feeding off of your snapshots, it's very easy. So if we go down and look at our portfolio here, now we have a report in Power BI that is a portfolio report. We also have one in Tableau, and you'll see that one as well. But they give you such easy access to rolled up information. So all the projects that I have snapshotted in this portfolio are all being displayed, different pieces of information in this particular dashboard. So if I want to go in and have a look at this information, just thought I'd collapse that and make it a little bigger, a little easier to see. You've got what's upcoming for the snapshot for November. So this tells you what's upcoming. I've got over allocated resource totals, but this middle section, I've got projects along with percent complete, total cost, whether it's over or under or on target. And you'll see that as I look at this information in this middle panel, there's color coding on it. So it's going to draw your eye to the pieces that you really need to look into. For example, here's my facility 2B project. If I look at labor under over, I've got negative 395 hours in the November snapshot. Of course, it's color coded a little bit darker orange, so it's going to draw your eye to that. You've got elements like days, late or early. Well, of course, pad 13, this is showing plus 46. So this one is definitely an early one. So if you scroll down, you can definitely quickly pick out the ones that you probably are going to have a closer look at. Now, if you're looking to see where these particular elements fall, for example, if I go into the project column, I can sort. So if I click, you'll see it sorts ascending, click again, it sorts descending, and that's available in any of these columns. So if I'm looking for something that has a labor percent over or something like that, duration over, you can sort on those columns, which of course makes it even easier to see what have I got to look into that I really need to drill down into. So I find myself that is very helpful, because when you're looking at this, I mean, nobody's going to have the time to go through each and every line immediately. It's going to take some time if you take that route. So the color coding pretty much gives you a pretty good idea of where you need to look first. Now you've got late and early. So we've got late, on time, early, and we've got budget status. We've also got projects by project manager, how many. I've got labor hours by the drilling team, and I've got budget hour status by team and project. So perhaps your projects don't use teams. You could group labor hours by a different criteria. Maybe you want it grouped, labor hours grouped by project type or location, or depending on what business you're in. So this type of information, of course, very valuable, but just keep in mind these are drilling projects, so yours might be rolled up a little different, but still to have all this information at your fingertips is extremely helpful. And if I want to look at that, this is November. If I'm looking, for example, at facility 2B, I can click on facility 2B And you'll notice when I do that, these interact together as well. So I can see this is where facility 2B is in the drilling team. Bob Beagle is the project manager, etc. So you can see where it falls in all of the other portlets. If I want to get back to where I was, just click on it again, gives me all the information back. So it's very interactive. And you also have all your filters across the top. So you can choose to look at, for example, one region. You could look at one team, combine them, whatever it is you need to look at. Now, if this is what it looks like in November, I can go in and just click over and look at what it looks like in December. So you can see my facility 2B, there was a change there, a good change. It's still at labor hours minus 120 in December. But if we go back to November, just as an example, you'll see that particular one was at negative 395. So although it still has an issue to deal with, you can see very clearly there's been an improvement. So that kind of information is very valuable as well. So if I go in and I look at the project detail, so I've got an overview here. Now, this is a different project. Initially, it's not facility 2B. We can go there in just a minute. But for a specific project, so I was at the portfolio, now I can drill down even farther and get the same type of extremely valuable information. And this is all at my fingertips. I didn't have to go in, open a number of files in P6, as Nicole was mentioning, go in and make sure I've got all the right filters, everything. This is created and the new snapshots are feeding it information. You're good to go. That's all you require. So I could pick whatever project I want, whatever snapshot I want. Let's just have a look at this one first quickly. So I've got labor hours. I've got the duration, CPI, SPI. I've got percent complete and costs. So it's tracking costs as well. So when you've got these Gantt bars, if you hover over them, you're going to get some more information. Now on the right side here, I've got a list of activities because we're down at the project level. So look, this is our list of activities. Again, percent complete, total over or under, and all color coded like it was before. So I can tell right away, what do I need to have a look at? Now, this particular project doesn't have issues with the hours. It has 3 activities I might want to have a look at with the total cost. Now, if I wanted to have a look at, for example, critical path, this is a new report. This one I think is really handy. So I've got the same snapshot, the same project. It's carried the filter over, but I can change that if I need to. So I've got criticality level. So looking at all the criticality level, what is happening here? So activities by criticality level: completed 13, critical 7, not critical 8, that type of information. Now you can see over on the right side here, I've got a list: your WBS, your activity ID, name, the start, and float, and criticality level. Now I can scroll up and down here. Now, something to be aware of, same as we looked at in the other dashboard, if I want to look at what elements do I need to focus on, what is actually something that could cause me extended grief on this project, I need to look into it, maybe see what I can do about it. Click on your column headers and you'll notice the completed. Then I've got all the critical and I've got the non-critical. So this acts the same way as the other dashboard we were looking at. Sort on whatever you need. Now, over the time frame, you can see we've got the Gantt display of the activities as well. So you've got completed, critical, and not critical over the time frame by the activities. So some really valuable information available at your fingertips, really. So if I wanted to look at another project, let's just see what facility 2B looks like. So this one you can see in the Gantt chart looks a little different. So we've got 8 critical, we've got 13 not critical. So you can see this is still sorted the way I had it before. So you've got a lot of very good information right at your fingertips.
Hey, Mary Lynn,
Mhm.
one of the well ones will give you the near critical as well. Those particular ones you showed don't have it. Well 100, 01, 01. Do you
1-1.
have
Sorry.
15, 1. Sorry, I'm trying to see it
Oh,
small
here
on
it
my
is.
screen. Yeah, give that one a try.
Okay. Here's exactly.
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
Here's the near critical. So now you've got a little bit different look to it. So here's your near critical, and you can see exactly what's going on with these activities. I didn't highlight that before, but you can hover over. You get a lot of different information that is displayed there. So you've got a very, very easy way of looking to see. I always tell people, and I know I do that when I'm involved in projects. I do tend to work with a number of turnaround projects. Any project, you're not only going to want to focus on what is critical now, but what's just sitting off the critical path. Because if those slip a little, they can sure impact things, and not in a good way. So you want to know what those activities are. That information is available right here. Now, I did mention milestone trending. I will come back to the resource allocation, but I did mention milestone trending. So we've got milestone dashboards here. So you can look at your milestones here, and you can see where they sit by the milestone type. Now, again, if you're not dealing with drilling projects, the type of milestones, what they read would be a little bit different, but you can still categorize them. And most projects have what's usually termed some form of major milestones. And then there will be more of a minor milestone, which carries different titles in different businesses. But you can categorize them, and you can look and see what's going on. So for example, if I wanted to look at one of these others, I simply just go in and click on it. So ready to license well site, I could go ready to permit pipeline as well. And you see where your milestones are sitting. Now I can go in and change my snapshot date. I can apply a filter depending on what it is you want to focus on. We also have all this good information available side by side. Now, I've worked with a couple of people who really like this layout, just simply because it gives you the ability to put, for example, this one is ready for production, but you can change what milestone you're looking at here. But this one has October, and this has December. Well, you might want to look at what it was 2 months back, and you'll notice as I go through these, you can hover over specific dates, and it will give you the information in that dialog box. But if I didn't want to look at October and then December, I can change this and look at October and then November. And you saw it change. So you can compare the information for your milestones extremely quickly. And to me, this one just makes it so much easier than trying to keep snapshots of your P6 file and using one as a baseline and comparing them all the time, because dollars to donuts, at some point somebody disconnects a user baseline that you need on the report, and you have to go back and redo it, that kind of scenario. Now, if we look at resource allocation in Power BI, this is one that I find, this report, I've walked through it several times. I think it works really, really well. Not that the others don't, but you can tell some of the places I've had to kind of focus over the years. But if I look at my resources, this is a resource allocation one. So I've got over allocated hours. And if I look, for example, at pipeline crew, So in the portfolio that I've got snapshotted, this is what the pipeline crew requirements look like. And I've got the Gantt charts in the bottom right. Now, if I want to see, I've got overloads here. Where are those overloads coming from? I have a number of projects listed, but how do I tell which ones are involved where? Well, I can just click on an overload and you'll notice that the other portlets in the dashboard change. So it's giving me the information that I'm looking for. If I want them all back, just click in there again. Very easy to do, and it will bring them back. So you can do that from this side as well. Now, if I'm looking, and this facility 2B is one project that I know I have to kind of keep an eye on here. This one is improving, but it did have issues initially, as you saw in the November snapshot. So maybe I'm looking for, where does this fit in the resource profile? So if I go to facility 2B in the bottom left here and just click on it, this is where the requirement for the pipeline crew fits in the overall scenario there. So if I'm looking at this overload and I've got priorities for these projects, I might want to look and see, okay, facility 2B has a high priority. And if I add, for example, maybe this one has a priority similar, and you can see where it's showing me in that profile where these ones sit in that particular resource piece. So if I was to select these projects, I know they will fit in the resources I've got. And maybe there's some other of these projects that can be delayed depending on what's going on. If they're all started, of course, you've got a slightly different scenario going on. But if you're selecting them, it's going to show you where these show up in that particular profile. So we can bring the whole thing back, but you'll notice whether I click in the profile, I click in the activities, the other pieces are going to react because they are all connected and they're going to try and give me as much information as possible, which I find really useful. So if I go back here, now you'll notice we have a Gantt chart one here. This is a different way of looking at resources. So I'm looking at all the resources now, but if I wanted to deselect them, and I wanted to just look at, for example, my pipeline crew, there's where it's sitting for that particular piece. Maybe I want to go in and look at accounting as well. Those types of scenarios. So you can see where in the Gantt profile are those resources sitting. So I see where I'm talking a little much. I really do want to show you some of the Tableau as well. So on that note, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over and let's have a look at a few of the reports in Tableau, because we have some along the same lines, but we have some in here that are actually not in Power BI right now. Not that they couldn't be, but just to show you what the different tools look like. So in this case, I've got portfolio summary, and this is very similar to what we were looking at in Power BI. I've got the combined portfolio. I've got what's upcoming here, so I can look at that. I've got the project name. I've got the percent complete, days early or late. I've got cost, duration, and labor hours. That's what these three columns are. Again, color coding. So if I hover over this, I can see very easily exactly what the issue is that it's highlighting for me. So it makes identifying those types of things ever so easy. And I don't have to open all the projects you see on the page and create filters and different layouts to try and get that information. I can automate snapshots. Snapshot's done. I can click on the snapshot I want to look at. This information is here. I don't have to expend a lot of labor getting to the report. I can use the information to make the decisions that need to be made. So you've got projects by cost status, by early, late, number of projects by project manager. So if I'm looking at, for example, George, you can see he's got 21 projects, that type of scenario. Now, labor hours by drilling team and project labor hours status by team. So again, very similar information to what we saw in Power BI, slightly different look to it. And you do have filters across the top. So what you want to look at, you pick it. You can change and look at what you need to see. Now, if I go to the project details, here's my facility 2B, and this is the November snapshot. Now, this particular display gives you not only some roll-up information, it gives you some trending information as well. So I've got percent complete, late, hours, CPI, SPI. I've got costs, and I've got the racetrack for where is the different, or I should say, are the different pieces of work happening. Now, there's an interesting one at the bottom here, this resource allocation. You may be looking at this thinking, okay, exactly what is this showing me? It's actually very interesting and I find very valuable too. I've got, for example, pipeline crew here. And if I scroll over here to where I've got the more red colors, so I've got a few hues here, but if you hover over that, what it's telling you is I've got a limit of the pipeline crew for April 2022 of 1,800 hours. All of the projects require 2,521 hours. So we are tracking 100%, 140% of the limit. So this tells me, depending on what date it is currently, this tells me, okay, we've got something we need to look into. Again, you've got 247%, you've got 107%. Now, you'll notice there's some blue ones here. Now, if I go into this, you'll notice it says 57%. Well, we're not utilizing all the resources we have available. And the project we're looking at right now is using 17% of the limit. So it's giving you some interesting information on your resource allocation there. Now you've got activities and again, color coding. So if I look at some of the activities color coding here, for example, my survey, the gathering system, if I come over to the days, you'll see that this is over by 51.7%. So again, the color coding is highlighting the fact that you've got an issue here that you need to look into. Now we've got a resource allocation that you can see it looks very similar to what we looked at in Power BI. Now, I realize we're getting a little short of time here. There is a couple of them I want you to see here as well. And you may or may not have seen these before, but in the turnaround world, this is one, well, there's a couple here that is extremely valuable and they get used a lot. Speaking from experience. So if I'm looking at, for example, my relief valve summary, my control valve summary, this is tracking, and I'll just look at the control valve, but similar on the relief valve. Now, I've got the servicing, I've got the status. So what stage is it at? So is it disconnected? Is it removed? Is it in the shop? Is it installed? Is it connected? And has it been, in other words, inspected? So we can see where things are at here. And you can also pick up really quickly on, do we have pieces of information that somebody's missed in updating? Now, this may look like something very simple, but these reports have thousands of activities behind them. So same idea for relief valve summary. The valve is removed, the valve's in the shop, the valve is reinstalled. Well, you can go down the list and you can check, where are all of my valves sitting right now? Now, we also have that for exchangers and piping. Same idea. Just keep in mind, these look very simple on the surface. If you've dealt with this type of reporting off of a P6 schedule, they're really not nice, neat packages to summarize them and get this information onto a report or onto a desktop takes a little bit of work. This way, your snapshot is feeding it. You can come here in here after an update and see right away, is there something I need to look into? Now, there's also inspections. Now, this is one that it is so handy, because in many of the projects that I have worked with teams on, these inspection summaries, if you don't keep control of your inspections, you can run yourself into a lot of trouble really quick. So this is a report that people are constantly looking at. And this works so much handier than having all the activities for that particular inspection, for example, printed on a great big piece of paper and put on a wall in a boardroom and people go and update it. This comes from the project updates. You can see right away what's going on, and if there's something you need to look into, you've got the information right in front of you. You can go and do that. Now, there's just a couple more. I realize we're getting a little short of time here. There's a couple more just to have a quick look at, and I'll turn it back to Nicole. So we looked at the racetrack diagram when we first took our snapshot. That was slightly different configuration of a racetrack diagram. This one is just letting you know that you can, of course, report information. This is by system and by function, the disciplines. So by system and by function, what disciplines are working over the time frame that your project is happening. And you've also got racetrack by function. Now, in this case, system and discipline. And is it engineering, procurement, fabrication, construction, or commissioning? So over the time frame that your project is happening, you can identify really easily, okay, for example, in July, what work is happening across all of these systems? And you've got that, again, at your fingertips. So basically, being able to snapshot your projects and generate all these reports from those snapshots makes reporting so much more streamlined, so much easier, and you're not waiting hours or days, anything like that, to get your information. As soon as your update is in the file, the snapshot can be created and you can come in and start looking at your reports. So on that note, I will turn it back to Nicole.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marilyn. And I will take back control and do the wrap up. I don't see any questions yet, so hopefully that means what you were showing is clear. It's a bit hard to really show in terms of what P6 Reporter is doing in and of itself without just using an input tool like we did there. In this case, we just showed two different options, but you can use whatever tool you want, okay? So we've got business objects that we've done Oracle data visualization. So really, whatever reporting tool your team is already using is the idea, is to keep being able to use what you're used to. Now, I don't think I focused on the fact that it becomes self-serve. So that's the huge part, right? So your team will know that your updates are done at such and such a time. Then they're going to get the latest and greatest. Anything else might be a bit old, but they've got the ability to self-serve. So a manager goes into a meeting and they can pull them up. They pull them up. They don't have to come and ask you, give me a new report, change this, filter this, change that. They can do what they need to. So that's a huge, huge benefit. And they can do it in whatever format they're used to. So that's also the benefit. Now, hopefully you saw things that made you see that it's more efficient, okay? The snapshots are done either manually, as Marilyn showed you, or they could be done, let's say, every Friday, if that's your cutoff point. And then they auto update into the reporting engine. So it's more efficient the visibility of the progress is so much simpler. And then you can focus on the issues more quickly. Okay, so that particular example with the milestone curves, if you start to see gaps in your milestone curves, you know you're falling behind. Okay, so you can see very intuitively a lot of data. So instead of hundreds of Gantt pages, which it could have been, you're getting a lot of data into just one page, a very nice, clean synopsis, like the green up reports that Marilyn was showing you. Okay, so the accessibility of the data that that person needs is huge. Okay, so an inspection coordinator doesn't need hundreds of pages of Gantt chart. They just need their inspections, and you could give them some float, right? So they have an idea of when what's priority. Okay, so that could be another one. And you can color code that too. So you don't have to give them the float because they may not know what that is. So you could color code the boxes. Okay, so red is like you got to be there on time. Orange could be less on time, a bit more wiggle room. So very easy to change those sort of priorities so it's clear. And then, of course, from the point of view of the management, right? So saving so much time, not getting into Excel, dealing with Excel, which has a whole bunch of its own problems when you start introducing that. And being able to see the snapshots and do your own comparisons. Okay, so the dynamicness of what you're giving to the team to action goes up considerably. Okay, so I think that is probably a good place to leave that. So I don't see any questions. If you had any particular reports you're interested in understanding, you can certainly throw that in the questions, or you could reach out after the webinar. That works too. So I'm going to start wrapping up now. I'm just going to allow you to let us know if there is any follow-up that you would like. Okay, so you could answer this question. That helps us make sure we're communicating with you appropriately from this webinar. And we've been working with P6. Well, Marilyn beats me by a little bit, but both of us together have over 30 years experience each in planning and scheduling. So our whole team has been working with Primavera tools for a long time, very long time. So not only do we have P6-Reporter, as you're seeing, but we have many other tools as well. So definitely take a look at our website. Donna can share the webinar URL if you're interested. I mentioned some updating tools. We've got the CAPS and the TAPS tools. So if you do a lot of turnarounds, TAPS is the absolute best way to do updating. There's bar none, okay? You can get team member, but it's not nearly as good as TAPS. TAPS is the best solution for turnarounds. For capital projects, we've got team member and CAPS. P6 Loader is another tool some of our clients use for updating. Now that's our Excel tool that lets you push and pull data in and out. Now we have so many tools because we've had programmers on the team since the beginning. So we do a lot of integrations. So we get data from other systems into P6. So if you've got other tools like SAP, JD Edwards, Oracle Fusion, Oracle Financials, Maximo, we've done integrations to all those tools and many, many more. Okay, so this is how you start to make P6 your real hub of data. And in terms of drilling, so the examples Marilyn was using, we've integrated to many drilling platforms, SiteView, WellView, AFE Navigator, etc. Okay, so the point there is because P6 holds the scheduling part, which most of those tools are not as strong on, if they even have them. P6 really drives the ability to do better resource planning, better scheduling. So it can become the hub of your data. And that's where pushing it out via our P6-Reporter to your corporate reporting can be huge, save you so much time. Okay, great. So I still don't see any questions, which is fine. I'll give you some contact info there for Mary Lynn. You've got Donna's contact info, and she's our regional manager in the Philippines. And she's also put the webinar information and is inviting you to join us for our Unifier webinar, which I will be doing tomorrow. So we'll be doing a deep dive on Unifier to give you an idea of how you could include Unifier and P6 to really be your full project control system for your company. Okay. I'll stop the recording.